Welcome, everyone, to another Tuck and Tell version of My Girl Life podcast. For those of you that don't know, Tuck and Tell is a solo video version of My Girl Life podcast rather than my typical interview audio only episodes. So today I'm going to share a few of Maddie's coming out stories. I've done a little bit of sharing in my interviews with other guests, but never got into details or what lessons I learned. But now that I'm doing these Tuck and Tell solo episodes, I think it's a good platform to share these stories and some of the takeaways. So let's jump in. First one is a female friend, one of my best friends. I had known her for about 12 years at the time. She was the very first person I came out to. We were having drinks. I told her I've been spending a lot of time with someone and I wanted to share them with you. So I proceeded to show her some pictures of Maddie. It started to dawn on her that it was me after, I'd say, 4 or 5 pictures. Of course, she was surprised, but not stunned. I was very supportive, even happy. And of course, she had a lot of questions, which is fine. And I answered all of them. And then she said she wanted to meet Maddie, which I had not anticipated. So I told her I'd think about it. And eventually we went out to a club one night and we had a blast. I was nervous and a little self-conscious at first, but after about an hour or so, I wasn't really aware that I was dressed. It felt a lot like I was just being when we were together in boy mode. Next is a male friend, a longtime friend who lives in California, where I used to live. And I would take lots of trips out to Southern California just to hang out and work. And I would always stay with him, except for a night or two up in LA, where I would go out to the Abbey, Sir, Tom Tom, any bar in Santa Monica. Next would be a male friend, a longtime friend who lives in California, where I used to live. And I would take lots of trips to Southern Cal just to hang out and work. And I would always stay with him except for a night or two up where I'd stay up in L.A. And I would go out to the Abbey, Sir, Tom Tom, any bar on Santa Monica in West Hollywood is always fun. And so I felt self-conscious bringing a huge suitcase each time when it was just me. So I finally decided I'm going to tell him. And I waited till we were out for drinks. And before I told him about Maddie, a really funny thing happened when a friend of his approached him in the bar, and my friend had broken up with his girlfriend, but he had purchased this expensive cruise, and they were talking about that. And my friend said, well, if I can't get a refund on the cruise, I'm going to put Jim in a skirt and take him with me. Of course, he was kidding, and he didn't know about Maddie yet. So when I did tell him about Maddie, it was really pretty ironic and pretty funny. And I definitely reminded him of what he said. So I came out to him basically in the same way I did my girlfriend with pictures, and he was very surprised but very supportive. We laughed about what he said about the trip, and overall, I'd say it was just a good experience. I think it had to sink in for him, but he's not afraid to talk about Maddie, which tells me he's comfortable, and I couldn't be happier with that. The next one, a big one, it was my mom. My mom was in her 80s when I told her, and I was one of her caretakers. And I would visit with her during the week just a little bit. But on Saturday, I would sit on her couch and we would talk for 2 hours. And she'd ask me what I was doing, what I was up to, what I did over the last weekend. And I would sit there and I would just have to lie to her because I couldn't tell her, what I did because most of it revolved around Maddie. So I decided to tell her because I wasn't going to sit on that couch and continue to lie to her. So I did the same thing with her that I did with everybody else. I told her I had been hanging out with someone quite a bit, and I wanted to share that person with her. I showed her at least 10 or 15 pictures, and she still didn't pick up that it was me. She was saying like, oh my God, she's beautiful. She looks like a movie star. So I finally told her it was me. And I don't think she really got it at first. I don't think she was understanding what I was telling her, but eventually she did get it. And of course she was shocked, but eventually she became very comfortable with it. So much so that she would ask me where I get my makeup and my clothes and, what we did the last week. She would ask me if I had any pictures to share. And, so she was very, very accepting and participative rather than just tolerate. So the best part about sharing that with her life and becoming a little more vulnerable to me was that she became a little more vulnerable to me and started sharing stories that I hadn't heard my whole life. And so it just kind of made us closer. Not kind of, it definitely made us closer, which was a blessing. Um, I have to share one more thing about my mom. So a little backstory. I'm 8 years younger than my brother. So I've always told my mom that I'm sure I was a mistake. And she says, "Oh, no, no, honey." She quickly assures me that they prayed for me and they prayed and prayed. And she would always tell me, "Honey, I love you. And I'm so glad we had you." That was what she'd always say. Well, my mom died a couple of years ago, and honest to God, her last coherent words were, "Honey, I'm so glad we had you. I love you, and I love Maddie too." Even on her deathbed, she knew how important it was for me to hear her say that, and I'll remember that my whole life. Um, Next is my sister. I was really nervous on this one. I'm really close to my sister, but she's led a pretty sheltered life. She's the sweetest person in the world. I met her for lunch before we were going to a family event, and it took me a while before I got the courage to tell her. So I was kind of in a hurry, and I don't think it didn't have enough time to kind of explain everything. But I showed her the pictures, and it took her quite a few pictures before she started figuring out that it was me. But eventually she figured it out. I told her, and she was supportive, pretty shocked, I could tell. But also at that time, Maddie had a Facebook profile. I didn't have one when I told the others. And I showed her my profile, and she said something that has kind of stuck with me. She said, "Wow, you've created another person." And so I thought about that for a minute, and I replied, "When I wake up in the morning, I know who I am. I'm not confused. And I also have no intentions of transitioning." So I wanted to assure her of that. But I thought that was interesting because in a way we do create, another persona, which, you could call it a different person, but it's still coming from the same core person, I hope. Anyway, we didn't talk much about Maddie, but she would hem my skirts for me. And so she obviously was okay with everything. Now, my sister and I can talk about Maddie more, even send pics on occasion, and she's very receptive. So I bring it up a little bit more, and she's very receptive, and I just go with that. This next one, I basically didn't plan on doing it, but I felt like if I didn't tell my brother, and I've told all these other people, that it might hurt his feelings. But I was extremely nervous for this one because we're not very close. He and his wife live close, but we're not very close emotionally, and they're very religious and very conservative. So again, I wasn't planning on telling them, but there was one night where we were having dinner and my sister didn't show up because she was sick. So I thought, this is it. This is my opportunity. So I told them in the same way as I told the others, and they were pretty surprised, but didn't seem shocked, although they're not very emotional. So if they were shocked, you probably couldn't tell. They did ask me more questions that others didn't, and it went pretty well. In fact, my brother shared some personal stuff about him, and he never does that. So I thought, this was a very positive thing. Well, all that got ruined one night at a dinner a couple of years later. And the situation was, it was my sister's birthday. So it was my brother and his wife, my sister and myself having dinner. And when I started dressing, I felt very self-conscious being anywhere. And then when I go out in public, I felt self-conscious about driving and being in public. And then I was worried about what if I got pulled over, like I was doing something illegal. And sometimes I would even dress in like a Target parking lot because I had my kids every other week and I just didn't want my stuff in the house. Anyway, now I look back on it and it's funny. I laugh at myself, but and I tell that story all the time. Well, their son-in-law is a sheriff, a police officer. And I was really worried that he might pull me over because he works in the area that I live. And I was always worried about that. And so I was telling him the story that, their son-in-law might pick me up and how embarrassing it would be to hand my license over and voila, it's Jim, who's Don's brother. And I told him that story, and my brother looked at me and said, "Well, maybe God's trying to tell you something." no laughing at the story, nothing. Just, well, maybe God is trying to tell you something. And I asked him, what would God be trying to tell me? He didn't answer me. I'm not sure. He probably wished he didn't say that, but it told me how they really feel. And from then on, I never mentioned Maddie around them. And it just seems uncomfortable. And I know their true colors based on that question that he asked me. So anyway, that was that story. Next one would be my best friend from college. Of course, I was nervous on that one, being a guy friend and everything. So we had cocktails as usual to get up the courage. I showed him the pics, and after only like 2 or 3 pics, he started questioning if the person I was showing him was a guy. And so, of course, I said, well, yeah, it's me. He was pretty stunned, but very supportive, had lots of questions, and still does to this day. But his questions are really to understand me better and the LGBTQ community better. So they come from a place of love, and he's trying to learn, the language and he's asked me my opinion on certain things that are in the news, etc. So I feel very comfortable. Our friendship is based largely on humor and seeing the funny things in people and situations. So he'll do the same with Maddie, which tells me he's comfortable with Maddie. We'll joke about it. I'll joke about it, and it just seems very normal. I did come out to 4 high school friends. They were best friends from high school, and we stay in touch. But we were all together for some reason I can't remember. And I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity. I told them, at first I think they thought I was kidding. When they knew I was serious, they were very supportive. We had some laughs with it. We have a great time, and they will bring up Maddie while we're texting. They live in different states, but they'll bring up Maddie. And again, that tells me that they're comfortable with it, and makes it more fun to communicate with them and share what Maddie's been up to. So, but anything they say and do comes from a place of love and camaraderie. The next 2 are my 2 best friends, 2 besties, my 2 ride or dies. I met them more recently, like 6 or 7 years ago, which is when Maddie was born, by the way. And there's no coming out stories because they met me as Maddie. The coming out stories would be me coming out as a male, which happened very quickly with them. These are the first 2 people that are with me in girl and boy mode on a regular basis. Talk about feeling seen and accepted. I thought I would be shunned, embarrassed, not accepted by the general population when I started dressing and going out in public. But I always felt loved and seen by my friends and my family. But this kind of love and acceptance was a whole new level, amazing feeling. I feel very blessed to have met these 2 individuals in my life. So, okay, last story. 10 friends. I have a group of friends that Maddie had made over the years that do not know Jim, which is my male name if you haven't picked up on that yet. So one of the besties I just referenced and Maddie were glued at the hip socially. So everybody saw us together all the time. And one afternoon, she and I were at a bar patio. I was in boy mode, and 10 of our friends from this group showed up all at once. They were on a motorcycle ride and stopped in for some drinks. And they saw my friend and made their way over to her. And it didn't take long for them to figure out who I was, that Jim was Maddie. I was not thrilled and a little self-conscious, but it really turned out to be, everybody was great. And it turned out to be the best thing that could have ever happened to me. See, all my close social week-to-week friends relied on Maddie. And I worried that if Maddie went away for some reason, I would lose all these friends. So the fact that they now know Jim and Maddie and I'm friends with them in either mode is not only convenient, but it's really heartwarming to know all these people can love all parts of me, and it doesn't rely entirely on being Maddie. So, lessons learned. First of all, I want to reiterate that I came out in pictures only with some of these people, actually everyone except what I call my new friends, friends I've made in the last few years. So it's not lost on me that coming out with just pictures is much different than coming out in person, fully dressed, or coming out that you're transitioning. So that's not lost on me at all. I know that's a whole other thing, and that I obviously don't have any experience with that. but I have immense respect for those who have done that. So lesson one is don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Because I was vulnerable, a lot of people I came out to started becoming more vulnerable themselves. Like I said, my mom started sharing lots more details about her life. And the whole thing ended up making us closer, which was amazing. Lesson two, be confident and don't apologize. I understand I've been lucky, but I also think the way in which I presented Maddie had an impact on everyone's reactions. I was confident. I looked them in the eye when I told them. I didn't apologize in any way. And I came across as proud of Maddie because I am. And that comes across when you're coming out. People can sense when you're confident and even maybe apologizing for who you are. And I think some people will not take you seriously. And if they have an issue with what you're telling them, they will see that that's a weakness and as an opening to criticize. Lesson three, encourage people to ask questions. So I encouraged everyone to ask questions after I came out to them, either then or later, so that they knew it was okay. In fact, I preferred it that way. Act normal, use humor about Maddie the same way you might use it with Jim. Like I said, I use humor a lot with my relationships, and I want Maddie included in that. This is also how I can tell if someone is tolerant or supportive, because there is a difference between being tolerant and being supportive. And then someone who's being participative, that's even better, right? That's the holy grail. I don't want anybody to be polite when I tell them and then walk away and think they have to pray for me to stop or change what I'm doing. I don't want their pity or prayers if that's what they're thinking. Those people will never talk about Maddie with me because of the way they truly feel. It's all in the spirit of acting normal after I've told somebody is what I'm looking for. And that's important to me. Lesson four, people who love you just want you to be happy. People who truly love you, they just want you to be happy. And I'd have to say, I think pretty much every person I came out to, they eventually said, you know what, Jim, if you're happy, that makes us happy. And again, that's only going to be from somebody that really loves you and cares about your well-being. So in summary, I have to say that I've had amazingly positive experiences coming out as Maddie. And granted, some of them were just in pictures, but that still is pretty scary to share. And I feel blessed for the people that I have surrounded myself with over the years, because those are the people that are supporting me. And I feel good about the choices I've made in friends. So last thought, the main reason I came out to my family and close friends was because when we would get together and talk about what we've been up to, if I haven't seen them for a few weeks or a few months, I would have to sit there and lie about a lot of the stuff. And there's some people I didn't really mind doing that and just kind of went with the flow. But some people I didn't want to. I felt like I was growing apart from them each time we got together. And I just wanted to share what has become so important to me. And that was really the driver as to who I told and who I didn't tell. So I hope these stories help others know they aren't the only ones going through all of this stuff. And I hope my sharing might benefit some and give them the courage or some tips maybe on how to come out and hopefully have a good experience. So thanks for listening. And remember, be bold, be kind, be you.